You know, when we all picture the first Christmas, we usually think of a pretty calm, peaceful scene, right? A manger, some shepherds, a silent night. But the original story, the one in the Gospel of Matthew, tells a totally different tale. It's actually a high-stakes political thriller full of paranoia, deception, and a desperate escape for survival. So let's unpack how this whole thing unfolds, and it all starts with one single question.
So the whole drama kicks off with this one question. Now, to these visitors, it probably sounded pretty straightforward, but in the court of a paranoid ruler like King Herod, this wasn't just a question, it was like a political earthquake. You have these mysterious, important-looking guys showing up in his capital city, Jerusalem, asking about a newborn king of the Jews, a title Herod felt was his and only his. To him, this wasn't a birth announcement, it was the announcement of arrival.
And the reaction? Oh, it was immediate and it was huge. The account says Herod was troubled, but that has to be the understatement of the century. We're not talking about mild concern here. The fact that all Jerusalem was troubled right along with him tells you this was a citywide political crisis. The rumor of a new claimant to the throne, apparently backed by these foreign scholars, sent a shockwave of fear right through the heart of power.
So this brings us to the first part of our story, the quest. And it's really two quests happening at the same time. You have the wise men on a quest to find a new king, and that kicks off King Herod's own frantic quest to find him first.
So who even were these wise men, the Magi? Well, they weren't just some random guys wandering in from the desert. They were most likely high-ranking scholars, maybe from Persia or Babylon, and their whole thing was astronomy and interpreting cosmic events. So when they show up saying a star led them here, you take that seriously. They were credible witnesses.
So what does Herod do? Well, being the sly political operator he was, he calls in his own team of experts, the chief priests and scribes. He basically demands, all right, where is this prophesied king supposed to be born? They dig into the old texts, and they find the answer, pointing straight to a little town just south of Jerusalem, Bethlehem. And just like that, the threat is no longer a vague idea. It has a pin on a map.
Okay, so now that Herod has a location, his paranoia shifts gears. It hardens into a very cunning, very deceptive plot. This is where we get into the next phase, the deception. He's thinking, if I can't stop this from happening, I'm going to control the outcome.
I mean, just look at how methodical this is. This isn't just a fit of rage. No, this is a cold, calculated intelligence operation. First, he gets the intel from his experts. Then, he privately questions the Magi to get the timeline just right. And then, for the final touch, he sends them off as his unwitting spies, telling them, hey, when you find him, come tell me so I can go worship him too. What a chillingly deceptive mission.
And this right here, this lays it all out. The contrast is just night and day. On one side, you have the wise men. They traveled for months just to worship. They were overjoyed. On the other side, you have King Herod. He's troubled, he's demanding, and he's plotting. It's sincerity versus pure paranoia.
So when the Magi finally find the child, they give him their famous gifts. Gold, okay, makes sense, that's for a king. Frankincense, that's an incense you use to worship a divine being. And then there's myrrh. And that one's, well, it's a bit dark, isn't it? It's an oil used for embalming, for burials. A lot of people see that as a really heavy bit of foreshadowing.
But Herod's perfect little plan is about to hit a major snag. The Magi get a warning in a dream. Do not go back to Herod. So what do? They completely disobey a direct order from the king and just take a different road home. And just like that, Herod's intelligence network is cut. He's sitting there waiting for his spies to report back, and they are never, ever coming.
And the failure of that deception? It triggers an absolute crisis. The spy mission is over. The story is about to shift into a desperate, run-for-your-life escape.
Literally, right as the Magi are sneaking away, Joseph gets his own warning in a dream. But this message is way more direct and, frankly, terrifying. It's not a suggestion, it's an emergency evacuation order. The angel flat out says Herod is coming to destroy the child. The threat is no longer a secret plot, it's an open and deadly manhunt.
And notice the urgency here. It says he took them by night. I mean, that tells you everything, right? This isn't a planned family trip. This is a frantic escape under the cover of darkness. They literally become political refugees, fleeing a tyrant and heading for Egypt, which was kind of the classic place you'd run for asylum in the ancient world.
And here we go again. You see this theme popping up over and over. This desperate life-or-death act of survival is framed as the fulfillment of yet another ancient prophecy. Their flight from danger is being woven into this much larger cosmic narrative. So, back in Jerusalem, Herod finally realizes the wise men aren't coming back. And the text says he saw that he was mocked. Oh, that's it. Now it's personal. His authority has been defied, his little spy mission failed, and he's been made to look like a fool. And all that political paranoia just explodes into pure, uncontrollable rage.
And that rage leads to an act of just unspeakable cruelty. Herod orders the slaughter of every single male child in Bethlehem and the area from 2 years old and under. And that age limit wasn't random. It was a cold, brutal calculation based on the timeline he had so carefully gotten out of the Magi during their secret meeting.
This horrific event, which history now calls the Massacre of the Innocents, is also connected to a prophecy, this one about deep national mourning. It frames this brutal act not just as the insane whim of a tyrant, but as this moment of profound, tragic sorrow for the whole nation.
Okay, so after the crisis, after the escape and the tragedy, the story starts moving towards its resolution. But, and this is a big but, the danger isn't entirely gone.
So let's just recap something really important here. These dreams. Throughout this whole thriller, dreams are basically a divine GPS. We've seen it 4 times now. A dream warns the wise men. A dream tells Joseph to run for it. Another dream tells him it's safe to come back. And then one more dream warns him to change course again. At every critical turn, a dream steers them away from destruction.
And this really maps out just how perilous their whole journey was. They're in exile in Egypt, Herod finally dies, and an angel tells Joseph it's safe to go back. But when he gets there, he finds out Herod's son, who's just as ruthless, is now in charge. So, you guessed it, another warning dream forces them to divert again, this time heading way north to a remote town called Nazareth. And get this, even this final diversion, this last-minute course correction to avoid a new threat, is framed as the final piece of the prophetic puzzle. They ended up in Nazareth not because it was the plan, but because it was the only safe place left to go. And yet, according to the text, even that was fulfilling a prophecy. So, when you put it all together, the story of the first Christmas is far from a peaceful, silent night. It's a tense story of survival, where a newborn baby becomes the target of a violent, state-sponsored manhunt, and his family is forced to become refugees just to save his life.
And that leaves us with a final question to think about. We're so used to seeing this story on Christmas cards, you know? But how does seeing it through this lens, as a story of imminent danger, of political pursuit, and of a very narrow escape, change how we view one of the most foundational stories in the world?